When one dwells into the core of Gita and begins to understand its teachings from a microscopic view, we realize that the Gita imparts life lessons that are very hard to ignore. In a contemporary sense, I consider the Gita to be the textbook of an MBA program on life management. While we have all encountered many self-help books on attaining success, becoming wealthy, manifestations, etc., few of us would explicitly read a book on how to perish. Yet, that is precisely the subject we will explore today. As we examine the recipe the Gita provides for a sure 5-step path to destruction. By becoming aware of this recipe, our intent is to avoid the dangerous pitfalls that can lead to our downfall. And in that regard, towards the end of this video, I'll give you 3 simple steps you can take today to avoid the ditches of peril or avoid perishing. In verses 62 and 63 of chapter 2 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna provides a surefire 5-step path to destruction. The focus of the 5 steps lies on the diseases of the mind, which are challenging to diagnose unless one becomes accurately aware of their mental state. Unlike bodily ailments, which prompt immediate treatment and diagnosis by others, when it comes to the mind, the patient and the doctor are the same person. Now, in the contemporary world, where does this virus of the mind begin? It all starts with our expectations, specifically the objects to which we direct our senses or attention to. When we contemplate these objects, it is natural to develop attachments. However, these attachments lead to continual desires. Depending on how those desires manifest and whether they succeed or fail, they result in dissatisfaction and internal anger. Doesn't matter whether they succeed or fail, there is that internal anger that continues to develop. The anger is not a physically violent reaction. It need not be. Rather, when Krishna discusses anger in the Gita, he refers to the disturbance of internal mental peace. Now, over time, this internal anger manifests through stress and dissatisfaction, and they build up organically, which surface and become evident through an individual's behavior. Attachment does not begin as something dangerous. After all, one could justify and say that unless an individual is attached to something, how can they put in the effort to achieve it with passion? The problem arises from uncontrolled desires and expectations stemming from that attachment. You see, desire creates those cravings. And upon achieving a desire, there is a momentary satisfaction, which then leads to increased craving because you want to go further. This in turn further reinforces the attachment, creating a loop. Now, if you examine this loop closely, we notice what we are pursuing is no longer desire, as that continual desire and attachment has transformed to greed. You have the cycle of attachment, desire, greed continuously running. You will realize this only when you become self-aware. Now, if for some reason this pursuit of greed gets interrupted, unfortunately this happens quite often than more, then it leads to an internal anger that I was describing earlier. Now, as Krishna states in verses 62 and 63, internal anger impairs your perspective. It impairs your decision making. It impairs your judgment. It's like a layer of dust covering a mirror. You just cannot see or perceive things clearly. Emotions take center stage in this cycle of attachment, desire, greed. When this occurs, you experience a quality or state of being lost, perplexed, or confused, or in other words, you go into a state of bewilderment, which in simple terms is a feeling of uncertainty, disorientation, and the struggle to make sense of something. The spiral continues, and the state of disarray begins to erode your intellectual capacity to function effectively. The outcome of this decline is visible when there is a significant decrease in the ability to think rationally. Like a silent termite, this disarray creeps into our mental faculties and starts eating it up. When this happens, my friends, one perishes. Peace and happiness become distant, while fear, insecurity, dissatisfaction, hate, anger, and a complaining mindset takes over. Now you may say, okay, Krishna, I get all of that. What is the solution? In the real world, the solution is not to give up attachments or desires. Instead, the key lies in how you balance and emphasize your attachment and resulting desires. If you allow your identity and sense of self on who you are to be defined and controlled by those attachments and desires, then Krishna in the Gita warns that you are on the path to perish. In verse 64 of chapter 2, Krishna advises that the way to avoid these pitfalls is to be fully engaged during using our senses, but doing so without being engulfed in that web of attachment and aversion. While this is easier said than done and may sound unrealistic to you and me, one can take small steps. Number one, begin by releasing attachments to at least some things in your life. Can you not think of one or two things that you can let go today? Continually in small increments, keep increasing the portfolio of things you will let go. Start with giving up something which is small but very, very pleasing to your senses. Look around within and look around you. Are there things you can start giving up easily? Like delaying the impulse to buy. Like reducing the intake of sweets. Just hesitating to pick up the next thing when you walk into a store. Small things, get started there. Number two, even if it is just for 30 minutes, redirect your mind towards a spiritual pursuit. Apply the brakes and avoid being perpetually caught in the rat race of the transactional world. More importantly, whatever you listen and learn from spiritual pursuit, apply it. Start seeing the results of that. Take any video from this channel and you will have a learning that you can apply easily. It's not difficult. Number three, dedicate an hour each week away from your regular work or routine to selflessly help someone else or the community. Become aware of this recipe to perish, and through that emerge victorious by conquering the termite that creeps into the mental faculties. Be aware of the 5 steps that lead you to perish, which is attachment, desire, being in that state of bewilderment, greed, and losing control of your intellect. And then take the 3 simple steps that I described. Look around you, start giving up 1 or 2 small things. Get into the mindset of increasing that as time goes by. Start very small, start with something very pleasing. Shift your focus, take 30 minutes every day. Go on a spiritual pursuit. Listen to one of these videos on this channel and start applying it. And number 3, weekly dedicate an hour away from your work, away from your normal routine to help somebody or do something for the community. These are the small steps that let you get going on the learning and emerge victorious through the learning and the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita. I'll talk to you soon. Till then, stay healthy, stay blessed.